Welcome to Idle Prattle, the unofficial Disney podcast where we will blabber about every movie in order.
We'll share our thoughts on animation, music, cultural relevance, and more. So take a gulp and take a breath as we dive deep into the world of Disney. Hey everybody, and welcome to Idle Prattle.
Welcome to the jungle. See, I took it that time.
That's an appropriate song for today's film, which is The Jungle Book.
1967.
Yes. So it has been 4 solid years.
Yeah, is this the longest jump between 2 movies?
I think so.
Very confident answer.
We can confirm that in the mailbag.
Right.
Yeah.
It's really easy to just put facts out there when we're like, we'll figure it out later.
Especially the last episode of this age, we're like, yeah, we're doing it next.
Just put it in the mailbag.
Right.
Oh, yeah. By the way, this is the last movie of this age.
This is the last movie of the Silver Age.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think I figured out why.
The Sterling Silver Age.
Yes, this is the Sterling Silver Age. I think that off air, I think mostly we've had a lot of conversations of why the Silver Age is so long and what constitutes it between this and the Bronze. And I think that now, this officially being the last movie that Walt worked on, I think maybe that's why it stops here. Because after this, Walt is not involved.
Right.
And so that takes a little bit of the silver out of the...
That makes sense. I really do like our kind of different break that we talked about before, which was when they start doing this, what is it called? Xeroxography or something. Yeah. When they start doing that for me feels like a more natural transition to another age, which started back 101
Dalmatians.
Yeah, and this definitely, that group really feels like its own chunk.
Because it continues after this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I agree. I was thinking about it today because I agree with you. And then I realized, oh, this is Walt's last, and that must be why.
So maybe because this is such a big age, we could put it into 2 sections. The non-sketchy section and the sketchy section.
The silver and the sterling silver.
Yes, that's true. Well, this is the end of the sketchy Silver Age. The Silver Age died with Sleeping Beauty, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I'm just afraid, let's make sure it's clear with our listeners. We keep saying sketchy, but we don't mean
like that
creepy
sketch.
or weird.
It
we
literally
mean,
looks like it.
It looks like a sketch of pencil kind of.
Sketchual.
Yes.
Although, I will say...
Sketchual.
A sketchual.
A sketchual.
You know what we're talking about, listeners. A sketchual. Defined in the dictionary as nothing. It's not there.
Nothing. It's not a sketch.
Oh my gosh. So let's dive in with a plot summary.
Okay.
That's how we do normally.
Yeah.
Mowgli, an abandoned child raised by wolves, has his peaceful existence threatened by the return of the man-eating tiger Shere Khan. Facing certain death, Mowgli must overcome his reluctance to leave his wolf family and return to the Man Village. But he is not alone in his quest. Aided by Bagheera the panther and later by the carefree bear Baloo, he braves the jungle's many perils.
Yeah.
Yeah, solid.
5 stars.
5 stars.
Summarize the plot. Didn't take too long. 5 stars.
5 stars. Thank you. Have all of us seen The Jungle Book?
Yeah.
I have.
Yeah, okay. I have. It's been a really long time.
It's a weird one for me. I feel like it pops up for some reason throughout my life. But it's never been a favorite. And that kind of stood with this viewing.
Yeah, I agree with you. I've very minimally changed my view on this from childhood till now. It didn't really speak to me, but I can acknowledge that it's a good movie.
Right.
So I think that's kind of where I stand. Is it's hit somewhere in the middle. I don't really love it, but I definitely don't hate it.
I raised this rating after this viewing. I wouldn't say it's my top favorite, but I enjoyed it a lot more than I expected.
Yeah, it's hard. This is one of those where looking at it from our analytical viewpoint, I like it a lot more than I did as a kid, but it's still not personally, it wasn't enough to make it like a new favorite. Like Bambi for me became like a new Disney classic in my heart after watching it. This one kind of staying the same, but I had like half a star appreciation more.
Yeah, I see that. I think in my notes I kept saying, "Ooh, I love that," and "Ooh, I love that." But I think as far as the story, just experiencing and escaping into another world, the story I think for me wasn't appealing enough, in my opinion. And we get back into this conversation that I keep having, that I keep struggling with, which is that this is a boy movie.
Yeah. It totally is.
By default, I think that there are not many women in this movie. When there is a woman, I definitely noticed it.
Okay.
But there aren't many, and not many that are integral to the plot. I don't know. Did you guys feel that way? I mean, I don't know if you
Completely.
process that
I do.
as,
As men.
yeah.
I definitely do. Because I think this was kind of created and maybe even marketed as a boy movie. But I think in general, the quote girl movies are the ones that appealed to me. So even though I am a boy and I identify as a male, I still get that same like, oh, well.
Chris wanted a female so bad that he thought Bagheera was a female when he was little. He shared that with me last night.
Bagheera does not sound like a female voice, but I think the name, something in my head, I thought if a name ended with an A, it needed to be a girl's name when I was young. And something in my, underdeveloped mind was like,
Youthful childhood.
yeah, something in my youthful childhood thought that Bagheera was a girl. So
Yeah. So if we move from kind of our gut reactions, it seems like a lot of them are connected to the story. So we thought we would jump into the story and talk about Rudyard Kipling's 1894 book of the same title.
Oh, yes, Rudyard.
Well, he was, quick facts about him, he lived in India for a while, but I believe was British, which is interesting because the Jungle Book features a lot of allusions to British imperialism in India. So I think that if you said it with a British accent, Rudyard Kipling. The whole point is that Rudyard is not a name that I have come across other than this, so it's not like we have a lot to go off of here. But The Jungle Book was a collection of stories that were once again released in magazines. I think that was kind of popular in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And this was in several different magazines that it was released. And then it was compiled for his daughter, who actually passed away really young. It's kind of a sad story there, but he did that for her. So the stories feature the same characters that we see in the movie, but there are some differences. I don't think the monkey Louie, King Louie, was in the book. That was created by Bill Peet, and I think in general there were just monkeys.
Right.
Otherwise, there are a lot of parallels between the story in the book and the story that we see, but there is more back and forth between the man village and the jungle, and it is decidedly darker.
I think the biggest difference would be tone. It was like dark and has like an air of mystery in the book. And this obviously was Disney-fied.
It's been said about the Rudyard Kipling origin that it's more about human archetypes and animal form than it is about just a story about animals.
Sure.
So we see a lot of archetypes, we see a lot of allusions or allegories within this framed world. And I think that the original people that were working on this movie were trying to hold too true to the original purpose.
Yeah.
And Disney was definitely like, please just work with these characters and this setting and kind of ignore all of that heavy stuff and just give us like a fun, playful story.
I think fun is like the key word from what I've been reading, that Walt wanted this movie to feel fun. And that, I think, translates both into the process of making it and then viewing the final product as well.
So do you guys want to talk a little bit about that process of creating the story for the movie?
Yeah, because I want to bring up Bill Peet one last time, because after this, he is not going to show up again.
Bye, Bill.
Moment of silence for Bill.
Womp womp.
Okay. Bill Peet, if you remember, we started talking about him a lot in 101 Dalmatians because that's when he kind of became the one story man for these few movies. Now he's been there since the 30s, and he's worked his way up to this. But now he's in this position of like authority, and Walt kind of trusts him with this. And he's honestly doing the work of like what dozens of people would do in the golden age. And now it's just him because the animation division has been severely cut down. So there's like a whole lot going on behind the scenes because Bill Peet took the reins on the Jungle Book story. And like what you were saying, he had a lot of like the same tone, and he had a lot of stuff from the book, and he wanted to work on this and he wanted to work on that. And he has a ton of scenes that are directly from the book and have that mystery and darkness. And Walt really pushed back on that. And to make a long story short, Walt pushed back so hard that this almost became like a feud between the two. And Bill Peet left the studio before this movie was done, and he never came back to Disney. So the reins were then given to a man named Larry Clemens, and he took over. Walt's on record saying that he'd like leave the quote icky sticky story stuff to him and not to worry about it. He wanted them super hyper focused on character and making sure they all had personalities, which I think they totally achieved. I think that a lot of this Bill Peet and Walt Disney stuff came from the fact that Sword in the Stone was poorly received. Walt wasn't hugely impressed with the last two movies himself, and so I think it just came to a head. And then
yeah, I thought it was really interesting that he stepped away from the writer's room, but then for this movie, even though it wasn't released in his lifetime, it has a lot of his touch on it because he would spend hours and hours in the writer's room kind of working on concept.
Yes.
It wasn't just Bill Peet, it was musicians as well that were getting let go because they weren't giving the tone that Walt liked.
Exactly.
So I think the rule is, in Walt's lifetime, if you were going to contradict him, you're out of there.
Yeah,
you know,
pay it.
Isn't that what happened with the artist in Sleeping Beauty?
Yep.
There's been a few times where he
You don't get to like just disagree with Walt and push through.
And push
but,
it, yeah.
But we have come across some accounts where Walt was like, I don't think this will sell. Like in Lady and the Tramp with the meatball.
Yes,
right, yeah.
He
Exactly.
didn't want that, but then some people pushed back. So I think it was like this tightrope with people within the studio. Like, do I hold fast to what I think is right, or do I let Walt have his way, or else he's going to fire me?
Exactly.
Right, exactly.
And I think it comes down to what he thought he knew better, because at the end of the day, Walt was a storyteller first. And so I think when it came to story, especially this time around, he was very possessive. Sounds a little negative, but I'm sure that's, he wanted to make sure it was right. And we're as we said, we're doing the Xerox process. Nothing's really changed with that. I personally think it's a little more clean now. I think they're doing a better job of it. It doesn't look as scratchy. Sketchy. I can't remember which word we used. Okay, well, before we leave the story, I just want to know if you guys think that the plot is like as tight maybe to like 101 Dalmatians, especially since it's based on like these series of books that aren't really in a big sequential order. Or like basically, what did you think of the story?
I thought that it was slightly less tight than when compared to 101 Dalmatians, but coming after Sword in the Stone, it felt like the tightest thing in the world.
Right.
Sword in the Stone feels like they just threw together a bunch of stuff and saw what landed. And this, at least, it felt intentional and it followed a plot.
I couldn't agree with you more, Chris. I think that it was right in the middle of 101 Dalmatians and Sword in the Stone. They're getting better at creating a story, a cohesive beginning and end, and action that leads us from one to the other. It was less conflict than the story, and it was lighthearted and really more about character than plot.
Exactly.
So when you think about this movie, you don't think about what happened in the story. You think, I love Baloo, or I love Bagheera, or whatever.
Mm-hmm. I think this movie, and it's not even a negative thing, but I forget what the point is sometimes, because I'm having fun watching him and Baloo go through the river, and I love the elephant scene. I have like fun watching these elephants march and all kind of stuff that you kind of forget why he's going on this trip and why he has to go to the Man Village.
Speaking of, they give you all that information in Bagheera's narration that's happening over the action at the very beginning. That's a really long narrative piece.
It is.
If you miss those first few minutes, you have no idea
like, what's
why
happening?
they're doing
You're
things.
like, what are you doing? Like, why are you? Yeah. Like, I completely, like, see it, and it's iconic. Like, visuals and the characters are iconic. But there's a whole lot of, like, let's have fun with this character for 10 minutes. Whereas 101 Dalmatians, like, nothing was wasted. No minute was wasted. I think that's why I prefer that one. And also, I caught the time disease, or whatever it is you guys got.
Time disease.
Because I was like, where is Shere Khan? Where is he? He comes in at 47 minutes of this movie, which means there's, like, what, maybe half an hour left? Maybe? I was like, what's happening? Where's the tiger?
Yeah,
Where is the antagonist?
It's better than Madame Mim, but
Yes.
not as
Right.
good as it could be.
Yes.
The only thing I would say as like a counter argument is that he is being talked about, where Madame
Right.
Mim was not spoken about at all.
Yeah.
It was kind of like the hunter and Bambi, never seen but always known and always felt. The presence is felt. So that might be the reasoning behind that, but I agree with you. I also paused. I also timestamped it. So
Yeah.
you're
It's
doing
rubbing
things
off.
to us.
It's not even, and it didn't even, like, bother me. I just was like, I guess it's one of those things where I thought I remembered him being in it earlier.
Speaking of, isn't Shere Khan a great villain?
He is a great villain. He's like proto Scar, which
You stole my thing now.
You stole my thing in the future that they don't know about yet.
It's true. Okay, fine, we're even.
So Chris did point this out to me that, granted, I noticed it myself, but he pointed out that Shere Khan is very Scar-like. He even kind of sounds like him.
Yeah.
He has very Jeremy Irons. Well, I guess it's the other way around.
Yeah.
But
Right.
it's just very, very interesting.
Sleuthy kind of.
He's so, like, haughty and,
Yeah.
you know,
Proper British.
Yes.
right. Although he's cleaner than Scar.
Yes.
But I think it's funny because, like, the live action version gives Shere Khan a scar. And so
I
then
know.
he's, like, really like Scar.
Yeah, but I do think, like, character-wise, like, the characteristics are very similar. The fact that he kind of flirts with the people he speaks
Yeah.
with, rather than it's
Plays with
just
his
plain evil. He does.
It's like toying with his food almost. It's like,
that scene between him and Ka is just beautiful.
yeah.
Did you hear me say playing with his food?
No?
Okay.
Did you just
You-
say it right?
literally
just
just
said it. Yeah.
I thought you were just being funny, but you're good. I think especially with Mowgli, because he, like, it almost is like he's not as interested in killing Mowgli because he doesn't know who he is. He needs Mowgli to understand the danger that he's in.
Yeah, it's a certain type of villain that is just so confident
Yeah.
that they don't even need to make people scared. Just being a presence is scary.
Shere Khan is the exact opposite of Cruella de Vil. Like, Cruella de Vil is the least confident. She's flailing about.
Right.
She's like, crap, I gotta get this done. And Shere Khan is taking his time.
Yeah.
And that's what, like Abigail said, his presence, and he knows that his presence is enough. Because literally the whole plot of this movie goes just because Shere Khan is back in this area of the jungle.
Yeah.
So all he had to do was show back up and take over. Like, that's just how it is.
He has, what is it? A reputation that precedes him.
Exactly.
Oh, yes.
And I just love tigers. In period. I've always loved tigers, and so I'm just like, hey, Shere Khan.
Yeah. So, Chris, as far as reception goes, was Walt Disney on the right track? Was it a better choice to make it lighthearted?
Oh, it was. This movie was extremely well received. The critical response, pretty much rave reviews. I was reading that some people kind of think that some of those positive reviews are steeped a little bit in, like, nostalgia because Walt had just passed.
Right.
Like 10 months after he passed.
Exactly. So that, I'm sure, has something
I mean,
to
I
do
bet.
with it.
There has to be, because it's like, I mean, it just happened with Chadwick Boseman. Like, I mean, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom is a great movie, but I definitely, like, wanted to see it and thought it was great just because, oh, this is Chadwick's last thing that I'm going to get to see him perform in. So there has to be some sort of bump there.
Totally.
But I think that makes complete sense, and I think it's valid because that's just, I mean, we still do that today.
Yeah. And then it showed also in the box office earnings. It earned $11.5 million on like a $3 million budget. From what I was reading, I don't think this is the highest that a movie took in, but I believe it's the highest that a Disney movie has earned so far. Does that make sense? Like, based on profit. And then moving one step further with critical reception, it was nominated for an Academy Award. It was nominated for Best Original Song for The Bare Necessities. However, it did lose to Talk to Animals from
Talk to the Animals.
From Dr. Dolittle.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Dr. Dolittle movie at this time?
Yeah. Yeah.
This is pouring in Bess all
Not
over
Eddie
again.
Murphy.
Well,
Yeah, that's what I was like. I know Eddie Murphy.
Yeah,
And...
it's a song. I'm sure some people on the other end of this line are singing it right now.
Do you feel like if we heard it, we would be like, oh, that song?
It just depends on your exposure to like movie songs of the 1960s. But it's like, talk to the animals, walk with the animals, something, something, something.
All right, do we want to transition into animation?
Yes. So,
sketchy.
Yeah, we see the sketchiness again.
Although I do think it is less so than The Sword and the Stone.
I totally agree. I think that we see the 4 years of difference between
Sword and the Stone
and this. I think that it's getting to be cleaner sketchiness, if that's a thing.
And that is a question that you asked last week, Abigail. You asked us how we felt about them taking a longer time between movies. And my response was, I need to wait to see the next film to see how I feel about it. And I'm totally fine with it because I do think that the animation was an improvement. And I think that is a product of taking more time.
Especially we see the benefit of taking longer in the backgrounds.
Yes.
And that was really important for this jungle feel. We see the palette change between like the inside of the jungle where it's green and lush versus where the elephants come in and it's more flat land that's open versus when we go to the vultures and it's dark and kind of gloomy. I did not see a moment that struck me like in the past two films where it was like the whole wall has been painted. No matter what's on the wall, it's all been painted one color. Yeah. I didn't get that
Me neither.
in this movie, and I'm really glad that they took time to like paint out every leaf.
This felt like a more logical step from Sleeping Beauty down to this. Like, as far as the detail in animation, I feel like it's like Sleeping Beauty, Jungle Book, 101 Dalmatians, Sword in the Stone. Like, so I was glad that it kind of took a step up, in my opinion. As far as the animation goes, just for our listeners, 6 of the 9 old men were involved in this film. And them and other animators actually did travel to India and visited jungles throughout India to make sure that their backgrounds were accurate and realistic. And they also studied the movements of animals, similarly to Bambi, although they did not, from what I can tell, they did not have jungle animals.
And have a panther hanging out in the
animation studio. I mean, you know, Walt had deer. I know that's different, but still.
I don't know. I think they did, though.
Oh, did they?
But they were also, I heard that some of the animation was taken from animal studies that they did for previous works, for shorts. I also think that the foliage was really dynamic. I think that was also very accurate to, like, Indian flowers and plants and trees that you would see. And I liked the variation of the animals. I know that really comes from the original work, but I appreciated that you saw a deer and a tiger and an elephant, and you got this sense that it was very distinctly Indian forest or Indian jungle.
Yeah, I agree with you. I always feel like I watch this movie and I feel like I can tell that it's not like an Amazon jungle.
I think that's a very important talent. And that, like, we allude to this all the time when we talk about lazy stories or lazy animation, is like, people won't notice if we just use this stuff, but the specificity of going to India and studying the movements of these animals so that it's accurate really helps us bridge the gap between fiction and reality. You know, I think it's always like when they're traveling through the jungle that you get to see so many different settings. You know, with 101 Dalmatians, we have 2-3 houses that we're working with. Yeah. But here it's like every setting needs to be different.
Yeah, and they really make it seem like they are traveling a long way because each setting is so different than the one before it. I feel like this movie feels like they could have been lazier with it. Like, it's a jungle. Just put some trees in the background and that you'll be fine. I'm not saying they should have. I'm so glad they didn't. But they were able to make each jungle setting seem so distinct from the one before.
And it interacted with the characters. Like when Mowgli is lying in that big leaf, like elephant ear leaf, and then it gets like folded over him.
The setting is a character. I mean, it really is. And speaking of characters, each character in this film I thought was designed so well. When there's a movie like this that's just animals, it brings me back to Bambi and how far they have come from Bambi and how far they're still going to go. But it just, each character is designed to be so specific and unique. They are simultaneously full of these like human characteristics that make them feel really relatable, but also at the same time are super realistic to how that animal moves and like would act, or so I would assume.
Right. Yeah, except when Baloo's dancing.
Well,
obviously.
I really liked, speaking of making them unique, I think that one of the animators was talking about how Kaa was especially difficult because a snake is so linear and there's not much to work with. So they really focused in on the eyes and making those eyes really a part of his character so that they could give more character in the animation, making them hypnotic.
Hypnotic?
Yeah.
I love Ka so much. My favorite sequence in the movie is his song. Not that the song is my favorite, but the animation that goes with it and Mowgli being hypnotized and like the way that Ka is hypnotizing him but also using his body to like maneuver him around and like put him in danger but also save him, and then he's just messing with him.
Yeah.
And eventually he's gonna, eat him. It's a hypnotizing animation to me. Like I just love everything with Ka because it rises the line of like beautiful animation but almost cartoony.
I actually saw a lot of relationship between this and Mickey and the Beanstalk. When the Beanstalk is growing,
Yes.
their body is kind of, because they're unconscious, is susceptible to the movements of the Beanstalk.
Yeah,
Same
totally.
kind of thing with Mowgli. So,
Right.
and I know you guys enjoyed that
We
so
did
much.
like that a lot.
So I think this was the same kind of concept.
Yeah, I loved it.
I love that connection.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite character design? Or do you think they all just mesh well?
I think they all mesh well. I do have one character design that I was just like, what? And that is the baby elephant. Why does he have a whole head of hair?
Oh my gosh. I thought the same thing at first. I
He
was
has like Beatles
he does.
hair.
He has like, I thought it was like Bieber hair. I was like,
Well,
little
yeah.
elephant.
Well, Bieber hair I think is like modern day Beatles.
True.
Like
yeah.
in a weird way.
Well, then the vultures had Beatles hair.
Yeah.
Because
they were the Beatles,
They were
but
based
they
on
weren't.
and they were supposed to be the Beatles. The Beatles were contacted to play those vultures, but apparently Paul McCartney was very against
John
it.
Lennon.
Oh, that's who it was. Yep, you're right. Sorry, I just
That
got them
sounds
mixed
more
up.
like John Lennon's kind of MO.
It was John Lennon. Yeah, he was against it.
But I agree, like, with the sentiment that they're not necessarily very anthropomorphic, but then you have human hair as like the one distinct thing that's not like the animals.
Right,
It's weird.
Yeah, the vultures, they definitely have like a human's blonde hair, luscious
Yeah.
going on.
So speaking about those characters, as always, I think we say this every time, it's part character design and part voice acting. And the voice cast of this film in particular is so stellar. I think this might be the film with the most voices so far that appear in other Disney films.
I think it's also the first time that they really reached out into like well-known TV personalities ever. Like I know Pinocchio, Jiminy Cricket, we had Cliff Edwards, but this is like the first time since then. It's like a handful of them are like well-known people. So like when people heard this, they're like, "Hey, that's Phil Harris," and that's
Did y'all realize that this is the first movie to have the voice talents in the credits up front?
Yes.
You pointed that out to me when we started it.
Well, and then, so because this podcast has helped me kind of get to know the big animation talents, I saw Reitherman, and I saw that as Mowgli, and I was like, how is an old man doing the voice of Mowgli? And then I noticed, oh, his name is Bruce. That's his son.
It's his son, yeah.
So that's a fun fact to kick us off, is that the voice of Mowgli is the son of the animator.
He directed this one. He's
Yes.
Wolfgang Reitherman.
Wolfgang.
They call him Wooly. So
Woolly.
yeah, but Wolfgang Reitherman, he's one of the Nine Old Men. He's the director of this movie, and when
Nepotism.
exactly, that's exactly what
But
I
also,
thought.
puberty is a
Yeah.
Exactly,
because they
because-
had another guy,
Uh-huh.
another kid that was cast as Mowgli, but his voice changed.
His voice had
because
changed.
that's what happens when you can't animate something over 4 years. Is
Right.
people grow up.
And Bruce Reitherman, the kid, had also he was his son, and he did the voice of Christopher Robin in the first Winnie the Pooh short. Which, fun fact, I didn't realize. I guess Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh is just a bunch of shorts put together, and there's already been a Winnie the Pooh short out there in the universe as of right now. So
I did not know that.
I didn't either. I guess we'll get to that when we talk about that movie.
Well, some other voice actors that have appeared before include Sebastian Cabot, who plays Bagheera, who we just saw in The Sword and the Stone. He plays Lord Ector. Sterling Holloway has, of course, appeared in numerous
Everything.
films, starting with Dumbo, right?
He was the stork in Dumbo.
J. Pat O'Malley plays the Colonel Elephant, and he is also the voice of Jasper in 101 Dalmatians. And then Ben Wright is the voice of the Father Wolf, and he is the voice of Roger in 101 Dalmatians. And then, sad fact, this is Verna Felton's last film before she passes. Well, I actually think she also passed before this film was released.
So very similar to Disney.
Whoa, hold on. When did Disney die?
66?
December.
Yeah, 66.
Verna Felton and Walt Disney died one day apart.
Whoa.
I
What?
know. Isn't that weird?
Moment
Yeah.
of silence for Verna.
Yeah.
That's a long moment of
Yeah,
silence.
well,
Well,
Verna deserves it.
Great.
I mean, she's been in so many Disney films. She is kind of like, I feel like she's been, she and Walt have had the most, we've mentioned their names the most.
Yeah, we've talked about
more than
Verna
Mary
Felton.
Blair.
Yeah.
We've talked about Verna more than Mary.
Poor Mary. We miss you.
I know. Well, she's not dead. Verna is.
So one of the voices that I have qualm with is Phil Harris. Not because I dislike his voice, but just because he comes back in Robin Hood and does the same voice. Little John and Baloo are so similar. They're both bears, which is difficult. They both look so similar. But the fact that he doesn't even differentiate their voices at all, I was like, come on.
And not only does he not differentiate, from what I can tell, he doesn't seem to take direction very well. He just does what he would say as Phil Harris.
Yeah, wasn't there, they were saying he would like ad lib.
Yes.
Yeah, which I mean, I think to the credit of this movie, it gave Baloo a lot of character. But like you said, when we get to Robin Hood, we can talk about it, but it's just the same character. But yeah, he just was like, well, I wouldn't say that, and this is not how I would say it, so I'm just going to do it this way. And then that's kind of how Baloo came to be mixed with the animation. Even when him and King Louie are singing, Phil Harris couldn't make it to the recording of I Want to Be Like You. And so Louis Prima did his part, and then someone else sang like Phil Harris's part. And so when Phil Harris heard it, he was like, no, those aren't I wouldn't say that. Those aren't my words. So he had to like play it, and then he ad-libbed new things to it. And so that's what you hear. I think it works, but it's just funny because Phil Harris is like, nah, I'm going to do me.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm torn because I think there's a reason why they pick him to do it. And I
Right.
really think he is Baloo, and he also is Little John. It's just like, I just think it's in bad character for a voice actor to not even try to differentiate their voice at all.
I agree. Aside from the voice actors, we also hear a ton of great music in this film.
I do have a hot take about the music.
Okay.
What is it?
I think that this music, while the songs are good separately, to me, they don't blend really well together.
Okay. I can take that. Yeah.
I think sometimes there's a movie that has like an overarching style, like jazz or big band, but I think this one has a lot of different feels to it. I don't know if they all.
Like it just doesn't mesh very well. I don't have like I mean I've said it once, I'll say it again. I don't have the musical intuitiveness that you guys have, but I will say that when it started throughout this whole movie, I don't know how to express this any more than it feels like a 60s movie. Like it sounds like it. Like when I watch like James Bond movies from this time and like other stuff, I'm just like, oh, I can hear the 60s in it. But I do enjoy the music of this. I think it has a very I guess mainly score is what I'm talking about, is like it really flows through. It just makes me feel it makes me feel something. And I think that's what music's supposed to do.
Yeah.
But did you guys notice that the music of the score, there's multiple times, it's the tune of what the song is at the end that the girl sings. Mm-hmm. And so it's like almost like a reprise by the end, like comes full circle.
I think Trust in Me and My Own Home are very similar.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that I Want to Be Like You and Bare Necessities fit in. Those are two totally different. Like, those to me are standalone songs. They're great songs, but they seem to not go into the overarching theme of the rest of them.
For sure. There's probably a couple of reasons too for that, because Bare Necessities is the only song that the Sherman Brothers don't do for this movie.
Yes. The Bare Necessities was written by Terry Gilkyson. And then the Sherman Brothers return from Sword in the Stone.
They had already done Mary Poppins at this point.
Mm-hmm. And they wrote every other song.
So Terry Gilkyson was originally doing the music for the entire movie. He had written songs, and then, like Abigail mentioned earlier, Disney said, nix it. It's we're good. But like the pushback, like you talked about, a lot of Disney's, peeps were like, you cannot get rid of Bare Necessities. They're like, this is a great song. And so they convinced Disney to keep Bare Necessities. And so that's what I noticed when the credits rolled up. It was like the Sherman Brothers did the music, and then one song, which was Bare Necessities, was this guy.
This, on the rewatch, made me like Bare Necessities like 10 times more when I knew it was like this one song that this guy did. Yeah. And he got sacked, but like this one song was amazing, and he like pulled it out because it's not anything new to say I love the Sherman Brothers music. I mean, yeah, they're great, but Bare Necessities was like this one song that he made that was so good.
He got through.
It made it through, and it's such a good song.
It is such a good song. It's like you can't not sing that song or get it stuck in your head. Originally, also the Beetlebirds, which is I'm going to call them. The reason that they were going to be the Beatles and now sound like the Beatles is because their song, We're Your Friends,
We're Your Friends,
that was originally supposed to be like a 60s rock song. It was going to sound like a Beatles song. Mm-hmm. By the time it got to Walt, he was afraid it would date the movie, which I feel like having these birds look like the Beatles and sound like the Beatles dates it enough already, so I totally understand it. And so it became like this barbershop quartet type song, which I think is fun, but I feel like it's so weird to think there's a version of this movie where these birds are like singing like a Beatles song Disney-fied. I think that's so funny.
All right, so real quick, I'm just going to list off all of the songs that appear in the film, just to remind our listeners. So we have Trust in Me.
Trust in me, trust in me.
Then we have Colonel Hades' March.
Zoom, zoom, zoom.
Then we have The Bare Necessities.
Look for the bare necessities, a simple bare necessities.
Forget about your worries and your strife.
That one gets a elongated cut.
You guys aren't going to stop me. You just got to talk.
Next is I Want to Be Like You.
Ooh-be-doo.
I want to be like you.
I want to walk like you, talk like you, too.
Then we have Colonel Hades' March for Prize.
And a smile, and a hint of a smile.
In the military style.
Then we have That's What Friends Are For.
We're your friends.
We're your friends. We're your friends to the bitter and the bitter end.
Then we have My Own Home.
My own home.
Is this?
My own home.
Is that the Water song?
My own home.
Which Eli said, and I agree with this, he was like, somewhere in there I can hear Feed the Birds.
I hear Feed the Birds.
Like Mary
yeah.
It's so reminiscent.
I don't know. I feel like Mary Poppins when I watch this.
Well, the same people composed
Right.
it.
I mean, yeah.
Did you guys have a favorite song? Yes, Abigail just shot
Raised
her
her
hand.
hand.
I love My Own Home. How do I say this? I have like a deep cut love, and then I have like a, everybody loves that song. My everybody loves that song is Bare Necessities. It's a great song. But My Own Home was like a new discovery that I just discovered a few years ago. And I think it is just so lovely to listen to. I mean, I would fall in love with her and follow her into that village.
Yeah.
She's a child.
But I love listening to her sing. Like, I don't like have to be in a relationship with her. I just want to follow her
listen
around
to
and
the
listen to her
song.
sing.
Okay, mine is I Want to Be Like You. I think that song is infectious and super fun. And it was the only song, I don't know if you realize this, we watched this entire movie without singing, except for that song. We sang every single word, you and I. And then the song, yes, and then the song ended, and we just never sang again throughout the rest of the movie.
Weird.
We, like, didn't talk throughout the movie. We just both were, like, writing our notes and just being like, "This man's red fire," and we were just, like, singing to ourselves.
We try not to talk when if we watch the movie together.
We sang every word.
Oh, well, that tracks because that is also my favorite song.
Oh.
I feel like you would have thought it would have been Bare Necessities. And Bare Necessities is a very close second, but I Want to Be Like You more.
Yeah, me too.
And shout out to the score. That pan flute is everything.
I know. George killed it.
Yes, I really love this score. And he's new. You know, he's not Oliver Wallace. So
You're right.
I feel like he needs a little bit of like, hey, you did a great job, sir.
I think he did do a good job because, speaking of I Want to Be Like You, they talked about how it got a little too crazy. And Walt was like, whoa. Because Louis Prima got in there and with his band, and they said it got a little too Vegas for these Burbank people. And so George Bruns did a really good job of scoring of it and bringing it down, making it still fun and great, and, you know, Louis Prima, but not as out there as he, like, did in the recording. Moving on to Expanded Universe, which is a perfect segue for music, though. Speaking of Want to Be Like You, I have a few things to talk about, but what I'm going to highlight is actually an album called We Love Disney.
It's great.
It is great. It came out in 2015, and it's like an adult version of those, like,
Disney Mania.
Disney Mania, thank you. Yeah. So, like, instead of, like, Disney Channel stars singing, it's like, you know, people like Neo and Ariana Grande and people that are, like, established professional singers.
Neo.
No. Yes,
Throwback.
Neo. I love Neo.
I'm not saying anything
You're the
against
best
Neo.
thing I never knew needed. That's Neo, right?
Yes.
Real quick, some other artists, because I just pulled it up, include Jessie J, Jason Derulo, Gwen Stefani, Tori Kelly, Casey Musgraves.
Yes.
What?
Yes.
What'd you say?
Spoonful of
Spoonful
sugar.
of Sugar.
And
I
it's
think
so
I've heard
good.
that.
Jessie Ware and more.
And so the reason I'm highlighting this album is because I Want to Be Like You is featured on it. And it's Fall Out Boy. And I think it's amazing.
Really?
You've definitely heard this. I've definitely made you listen to this album.
I had never heard of this album until we started dating.
Yes, but I've made you listen to it a few times. And I just think that it's a great album. You should go at it if you love Disney, because we love Disney. Tinkerbell, you know, our favorite fairy, is featured right on the front. She looks sketchy in the drawing way. Let It Go's on there, and it just sounds like the, you know, pop version of Let It Go. I think they could have done without that. It was just because Frozen was so lucrative at the time. But like Everybody Wants to Be a Cat is on there, and it picks good ones. But I Want to Be Like You, Fall Out Boy. If you don't listen to the whole album, listen to that. It's fun. I love Fall Out Boy. This movie also gave us a direct-to-video sequel, The Jungle Book 2. I have not seen it.
I'm pretty sure in that film, the young girl
Yes.
at the end is like a main character.
Yes, she's definitely in this. And then there is 3 live-action remakes of this movie. Some people might remember there was one where Mowgli is an adult, and it's more like an adult movie. That one's in 1994. And then 98, there's a Jungle Book Mowgli story, and it's back when he's a kid, and it's more of like a direct remake. But then in 2016, my personal favorite of the live-action Disney remakes in this, you know, era,
Directed by Jon Favreau.
Jon
Oh, yes.
Favreau.
Yes, director
My
of...
Favreau.
Oh my god.
That's good. And I feel like if anybody has not seen that, but if you have seen the live action Lion King, I feel like this Jungle Book remake was almost like a test drive to see how the technology would work and things like that.
Right.
But I think that this live action of the Jungle Book works way better.
It works way better. If you didn't like the Lion King, but you wanted, yeah.
I just meant technology wise, not like a first draft.
We'll get to that in a while. But the Jungle Book live action, I think, is my favorite adaptation so far. The technology's great. It looks good. And he's my favorite, too. There is, if you guys have heard of Tailspin, sort of like
course.
a DuckTales era show,
Woo-hoo.
where we thrust some of these characters like Baloo and Shere Khan and King Louie into like the present, and they're much more anamorphic. What is the word? Anthropomorphic. Thank you.
Animorphs.
Animorph.
Isn't that book
That's
series?
that book.
That was a book series, yes.
Where they like get into a different animal.
Yeah.
And I would never read the book, but always stand at the library and pull out a book and see how they change.
Same.
A different
The
thing.
same thing. And I never read one.
Yep.
Okay, well, these were not Animorphs. They were anthropomorphic, and so, like, you can look it up, and Baloo will be, like, in a Hawaiian shirt and a hat, and I think he's, like, a pilot, and I think a lot of people maybe do you remember watching that show. So that's a few things that came out of the expanded universe for Jungle Book.
Why does he look so sexy here? Like, he looks like he's trying to seduce me.
Yeah.
I hate it. I absolutely hate this.
Oh, jeez. Stop crushing on a bear.
Oh, when we get to Robin Hood, I'm going to crush him real hard.
When we get to Aladdin, we're going to have to.
Aladdin's
I'll be
a
back.
person.
From who?
Aladdin.
Aladdin.
Oh, but he's not an animal.
Oh, okay. Anyway. So it's interesting that you just brought up so many different things.
There was a lot.
Because in the parks, Jungle Book is all but not there.
so
there are a few things. We can choose your own adventure. So be thinking. And while you think, yes. So for those people that didn't listen to our 101 Dalmatians episode, I'm doing this new thing for really underrepresented movies in the parks. That is for us to come up with our own ride. And if you want to come up with your own ride, attraction, meet and greet, or restaurant for a movie, send it in to us and we'll share it during our mailbag. But they're going to think while I share some fun facts about what was in the park. When Animal Kingdom opened in 1998, there was Journey into the Jungle Book, which has now been taken over by Tarzan Rocks, the show, and then now it is Finding Nemo, the musical. And all of those are stage performances. So they have, in the parks, they have like 30-minute performances. This was a live performance with use of hume animals, which is a funny way of saying a person that's pretty much in full costume, except for their face is exposed. And there is a great YouTube video of somebody filmed this show, and it looks so cool. It's like it has a little bit of like a Julie Taymor vibe to it, like Lion King, the musical. It looked really fun, but it only lasted for like 1 or 2 years and then it left. There was also, before Rivers of Light, which is the night show at Animal Kingdom, they had Jungle Book Alive with Magic. It was this really weird 1-year run light show, and it featured Jungle Book. And my big qualm is that Animal Kingdom doesn't use half. They probably don't even use 75% of their animal movies.
Films.
I think it's crazy that there's not one thing in Animal Kingdom that is explicitly like Jungle Book.
Right.
The only place where you can really see it now is Baloo and Mowgli are huge in front of the Pop Century Resort building that represents the 60s. So, if there were to be an attraction, what would it be?
So, I mean, this might not be, groundbreaking, but I feel like a kind of like a dark ride, but part of it could be dark. But I'm thinking like a log flume similar to Splash Mountain, where you're outside for most of it in kind of a jungle environment, but there are also animatronics of these characters kind of doing things kind of like how Splash Mountain is. And then if you want to have parts, like I could see you going like into like a tunnel where it gets dark, where Kaa is kind of involved, and maybe like you're going through this tunnel and Kaa is like spiraling all around you, so you're like inside the spiral of Kaa.
That would be so freaky.
And then maybe like a little dip or a little drop or something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Kind of Jungle Cruisey.
Yeah, kind of Jungle
Jungle
Cruise.
Cruise.
Maybe that's too derivative of Jungle Cruise, but I'm kind of thinking like a combo between Splash Mountain and Jungle Cruise.
Gotcha.
Okay. You're walking into Animal Kingdom. Maybe you go to Asia. Maybe that's where this is. I don't know. Your significant other wants to go ride the cool ride, but your child is terrified, and you don't really like him either. What are you going to do? What you got to do? And then you look, and there's a big sign, and it's called the Jungle Nook, and it's a jungle gym. But it's like insanely detailed, and it's huge. And it's where the meet and greets happen for these characters. It's jungle themed. There's an ancient ruins section. There's like the gloomy vulture section. There's the wolf cave that you can go into and climb on top of. And it's all just a very immersive jungle gym for kids ages 8 to 12 and adults if they need to.
Poor 5-year-olds
I
that
know.
love
I'm like,
jungle
why
gyms.
8?
Aren't
Why did it
allowed
start
on
at
it.
8?
I don't know.
I love that idea.
I love
and
it too.
Yeah, I love that title for it too, the Jungle
The
Nook.
Jungle Nook.
And I'm going to tag onto yours. I think there should be a quick service restaurant right next to it.
Yeah.
So that like the parents or whoever can grab a snack while the kids play.
I think it'll be a perfect place.
I think that's a brilliant idea.
Thank you.
Come on, Disney.
You heard it.
Hopefully they're listening to us.
think
But
they are.
hopefully they'll pay us $1 million for
Right.
our
For
ideas.
these copyrighted ideas.
That's why we're IP.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think there should be a holiday stage show called The Jingle Book.
Hold on now. Hold on. You've already said yours.
I just wanted to make a pun.
Okay.
Oh, that's so funny. Well, that's all I have for parks.
All right, well, now we're going to transition into our favorite section, the Does It Hold Up? And so I'm just going to start with the Bechdel test, which this movie does not pass.
Nope.
No women communicate with one another.
The
None
only
of them have
time a
names.
woman talks is when she is holding up and fighting the patriarchy.
But really?
When Winifred, the female elephant, is talking to her husband and says, if you don't help this boy, I'm going to lead this brigade or whatever. And I really like how she sticks up for herself. That being said, she's the only woman with a speaking role. And then we have the girl at the end, and that's
It's a singing role.
about it.
She has no name.
Yes, and also Mowgli is just like, beautiful voice. I'm in love. I'm good. I'm done. That's it.
And
She
then we
doesn't
have-
have any character or anything.
I can't remember her name or if they give it in this movie, but also the wolf mother. So, no, it does not pass whatsoever.
In my opinion, and this kind of goes with does it hold up and speaking about women in general, but in my opinion, I think Mowgli is too young to fall in love with a girl.
Yes.
I think he's a child. I feel like it would be different if he was a teenager. I would say like if that actor's voice had dropped and they kept him as a speaking role and aged his character a little bit, I could understand that. But here's my rewrite, and tell me what you think. I think he should have seen a group of children playing by the river and want to go join them
Right.
playing.
I love
I-
that so much more, Abigail.
I honestly read it that way. Like, I know it's not presented that way, but I also feel the same. I guess it doesn't bother me that he's, like, maybe, quote, attracted to her. But I feel like it could have been an adult man. And him like, holy cow, that's what a man is. Like, that's a human. And he's immediately drawn to that because he realizes that's, like, where...
As far as being read like that, though, I think it's very clear that he is attracted to her
Yeah,
as,
that's what I
as
mean.
a woman.
Like, that's how it's presented. I just always, like, when I was watching it, I'm like, in my head, I was like, it would be either way. He's definitely attracted to her, and that's why he wants to go. But in my mind, I just read deeper into layers of, like, there's multiple reasons why he wants to go in there.
And I love that song that she sings, but she definitely, that whole song, now that I'm thinking about it, that whole song is about her fitting into the gender norm of being a woman.
Yes.
She's like, when I'm older, I'll have a husband and I'll send my children to fetch the water and we'll keep repeating this cycle until we die.
Yeah.
So
She's like, and there he is.
It's still a beautiful song.
it's still a beautiful
It's a
song.
beautiful
Yeah.
song. And I mean, that's, she probably does fall into that norm in this space. But I agree with you. That's a better rewrite.
I think he is such a child, and everything else that he does is such a childlike response to things. He's just very confident, and he doesn't listen to authority.
So if he saw people that looked like him having fun, because his entire thing is that he's scared of the man village. Like, he doesn't know it.
Yeah.
And then now he does. And I think it's really interesting also that he chooses this after Shere Khan has been dealt with. Like, Shere Khan is not exactly the threat that he was, and yet Mowgli still decides to go.
So for that even works into the rewrite that I was just saying, because it would make more sense if he wants to go have fun with Baloo.
Right.
If he saw kids having fun, he would say, I want to go do that. It doesn't really go with anything else in the movie for him to say, like, and now I'm in love.
Yeah.
And I'm hypnotized by this woman's beauty. But that's not even the reason for I don't think that plays into the disclaimer at the beginning of the movie. So Disney Plus has that same disclaimer that we've seen for Peter Pan, Lady and the Tramp in front of this movie. Why do you think that is?
So before starting the movie, I would have thought it was something to do with the chimp and monkey characters based on some things that I had read. But then after watching the movie, this is something I want to bring up in a minute, but after watching the movie, I was like, oh, maybe not. So my thought was, which I know you had mentioned this before we started the podcast, Abigail, but I made a note as well that Mowgli is an Indian male and is voiced by a white person.
And the girl character were definitely voiced by white actors but they were depicted artistically as Indian children. So that could be the case. Also that, I agree with you. I think that it is less clear with Louis Prima. I said that it could possibly be that the music that he is singing definitely comes from African American culture. This jazzy big band sound is definitely something that he is culturally appropriating. That could possibly be the case. But I was waiting to see something very similar to the crows in Dumbo, which are just like, you can tell that
blatant.
Right.
It's the way that they're speaking is poking fun. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's
I don't think when I heard and this is just how I'm interpreting it.
Right.
When I heard the monkeys speak, I was like, oh, I mean, they're wily, but I don't hear any specific.
And also, it's not all of them. They have a distinctive voice. I think only 2 of them sound similar to me. I was listening careful because I wasn't sure. I kept waiting for something to be a problem. I also personally did not feel anything wrong. I didn't even catch the jazziness of it. When you said that, I realized, okay, now there might be something.
So I did do some research throughout the day because whenever we watch a movie, I Google some like keywords. Like I Googled the Disney film with something like racism and sexism and common things. And with the Jungle Book, I saw conflicting articles and I saw think pieces kind of arguing both sides, which I will say for previous movies, if something was kind of seen as racist or sexist or whatever, I saw think pieces arguing that it was and then nothing really disclaiming it. And this, it was kind of both. But what just, I do want to bring it up, especially because although we might not have seen anything wrong with it, we are also 3 white people.
Yeah,
so
right.
I definitely want to address what other people are saying. So one of the articles read that the character of King Louie is an ape with poor linguistic skills and sings in a Dixieland jazz style and is shown as lazy. This character has been criticized over the years for being a racist caricature of African Americans, which, just because I didn't see it doesn't mean that that's not true. Like you said, Abigail, I think there were so many instances of this that we have seen, not just in Disney films, but just in history. And this did not read that to me.
Well, this is reminding me of the conversation that we had in Peter Pan, where you were pointing out some anti-Semitism that wasn't blatant. It wasn't blatant, and it could be really subliminal. It could be something that our brain sometimes is like, no, turn that off. That's not something that's happening, but it really is happening, and it's way more apparent to somebody that's being oppressed by the stereotype than people who are just appreciating it for entertainment's sake. So that being said, this is new for me to kind of explore Jungle Book as something that might be offensive. Once again, we implore you, listeners, to join us in this conversation about what your thoughts are on it and if Jungle Book strikes you as problematic in any way.
I'm not the one that would be being oppressed or being offended by this because I'm not experiencing it. So I wouldn't get the more subtle references to that, whereas the crows and stuff in Peter Pan are just so obvious.
Well, the other thing is the implication of the song I Want to Be Like You is saying that these characters that people are relating towards underrepresented group want to be more like the people who are representing the more white-centric characters.
Right.
And that also is offensive. Like, why would you want to be? I mean, why don't you want to just be yourself? I don't know. Every single movie that we've watched, even we gave like Bambi a 10. We gave like 101 Dalmatians a 10. The truth is that the producing team that's behind all of these movies are usually completely white. And that doesn't hold up.
You're right.
And
exactly.
the people who are voicing, like, if this movie was holding up 100%, there would be people from India who are
portraying the Indian people.
And the other thing is that the source material has been criticized because Rudyard Kipling is a imperialist. And he definitely represented a white person who came into India and claimed it as his own.
Right.
And he was for that. So I think that's problematic as well. So, it's not overt, but this movie definitely has room for growth.
Yeah.
Yes. And a lot of the arguing kind of saying that this is not racist, which I saw coming from people of all different backgrounds. It wasn't just like only white people saying this isn't racist, was saying that
so our listeners know, it is thundering and it is February and it is weird. Okay, go ahead.
Was that the art style of these apes was no different from the art style of any of the other animal characters, and that some of the monkey characters even kind of had that Beatles-ish hair, and one could argue that they were modeled even more off of that type of style of culture, just in how they were drawn. So that was kind of one argument.
If we think about when this film was being made and what was happening with the civil rights movement at the time, I think that we are going to move further away from overt racism or an overt systemic influence on the way that race is depicted and move more into subliminal choices and things that are more subtle but have room for growth.
That's so well said.
You're completely right. And that honestly worries me even more, because then it's the subtle, hidden micro things that people like to brush off as not meaning anything, or is sort of the stuff that really gets to me more than anything. So I'm not going to take away anybody's experience watching this movie and feeling like their culture is being not represented correctly. But I will say that as a white man sitting here in front of my microphone, I didn't notice it at first, so I'm going to continue to look into it in the future.
Yeah, I want to continue to learn, and I will say this is the first instance so far that something has been brought to my attention that I didn't catch, which I don't even know why I'm saying that. I'm not saying that means that it is or is not real or anything like that. I think that's just showing even how more subliminal it can be, and even somebody who's trying to find these things and kind of fight against them can still be susceptible to not seeing them.
Right.
Oh, completely. And I think that's why we like to talk about these things, because if you're susceptible to them and you don't recognize them, that's when it's dangerous to fall into them.
I think that we're learning so much from the people that are writing into us and exploring these concepts and speaking from their perspective. I think that's really helpful to us. So.
For sure. So, do you have a rating for it? Because I'm like on a seesaw right now of where I'm at. Because I honestly, my gut right now, I'm going to give it a 7.5. But just like what I have like on screen, what was presented to me, I feel like it holds up fine.
I'm going to go with a 7.5.
I'm going to go with a 6. I think that for me, female representation was really weak in this movie.
Right.
And that that's the thing that I know from personal experiences, that there weren't a lot of women. And then noting the implications that we gathered, that's where my 6 is
Look at us
coming
being
from.
men.
I know.
I want to go to a 7 now.
Okay.
Pretend that I was always at a 7.
Or our average score can
Or
be a
something.
7.
You're right. Yeah. We'll see. We also are allowed to change these ratings as we go along.
Oh, yeah.
Because we are all learning. I'm like kind of mad at myself that the woman thing didn't bother me in this one. I think because it's animals, it tricked me.
And I will say something about any time that I bring up women representation. It doesn't hurt my feelings.
Right.
I don't watch Jungle Book and say, how dare they not represent me?
Right.
As a child, the way that I processed it, and I wonder if other women out there feel the same way as me, you just have this subliminal sense that, like, I like this movie less because I don't see myself in it, but I enjoy parts of it for what it is. So, you know, my favorite movie isn't going to be this movie, but it's not for me. And I think that we've also seen that sentiment shared when we're talking race, too. You know?
Yeah.
I'm not without being represented. There is so much in the Disneyverse where I could say, well, Jungle Book's not my thing, but I have like 25 billion other movies in the Disneyverse that are definitely catered towards women protagonists. So,
But also, this movie would not be detrimental if Baloo or Bagheera were one of them was a woman.
right.
I thought Bagheera was.
Exactly. So it's not like it would mess up the story if we had a well-rounded female protagonist in this movie.
Completely agree. So maybe a 7.
Maybe a 7.
Yeah, that's
I'm gonna
fine.
put it as a 7. I didn't expect to get this in the deep of a hold up with this movie, but I'm glad we did.
All right. So did you guys have a favorite character?
The rain.
Okay. Yeah, it's just going to be...
I'm gonna say it's just gonna rain.
It's raining, everyone. If you can hear it, it's
If
raining.
you hear something, it is rain.
It'll be okay.
I always love Bagheera. Sorry, what was happening?
Chris-
I'm
This is
just
a reaction.
shocked at how
Oh.
crazy. Where did this rain come from? Okay, so my favorite character is Bagheera.
I really like Junior.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's super cute.
Yeah, he is.
Very cute.
Even though I don't love the hair.
I've always liked the
Okay.
hair. Like, as a little girl, I was like, oh, Junior.
I think my favorite character is also Bagheera.
Oh.
I've always been drawn to Bagheera. I don't
That's
know
so
why.
weird. In my notes, I said, people probably don't like Bagheera, but he's such a great guy.
No, I
you
love
know?
Bagheera. I
love
love
him.
Bagheera. He's not the most fun, and he's not the, funniest, but I think that I think because people don't like him very much is why I like him, because I'm like, he saves Mowgli. He rescues him. He's so, he low-key leaves him a few times in the jungle, and I don't know if he was, like, actually leading him or not. But I would say Baloo and Bagheera together make a really great character.
Oh,
Although
yeah,
I
they're kind of each
prefer-
other's foils.
Right, they're the coin, two sides.
Bagheera just screams gay uncle to me.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
everything about his character, like, at the end of the day, loves his little niece or nephew.
But he ain't gonna raise him.
Right. But he's also like, okay, you're doing the most right now. I'm leaving you.
You're
That is
leaving
such a
you,
great parallel.
and,
I totally see it.
like, first of all, I'm gonna save you, but you're gonna be raised by somebody else. I will come visit you. Oh, you're in
I care
danger.
about
I'm
your
gonna get you
well-being.
out of here.
Right. But I don't
But
really
only
want to
to
do
a
all
certain
the work.
extent.
You are
Right.
getting on my nerves. It's time for me to take a break.
I guess that could just be any uncle, but to me it just screams.
Well, yeah,
I don't know.
because that's
It's my
that's
experience.
our view.
Yeah.
Look at us. We're just proving our points.
Because
on here.
sometimes if you're not in the story, you got to put yourself in the story.
There you go. So, Gay Uncle Bagheera, that's my favorite. Speaking of who raised Mowgli, my poor unfortunate soul is his wolf mom.
I agree.
Where was she?
They
Where
just
was-
all made the decision.
They
Once
all-
again, the men
made
making
the
decision for them.
And then even the dad was like, he's like my son. I'm like, no, he is your son. And where's your wife who raised him? I'm just saying that was, it was between her and that little monkey that couldn't do his song because King Louie kept pushing him, but obviously the mom is worse.
Okay, I'm going to agree. I think the wolves in general are the poor unfortunate souls of this film because they spend, 8 years raising this child, and then this child is just taken from them. And we never see what happens to them. So that's my vote.
I
Abigail?
hated that.
My poor unfortunate soul is
Oh, she's flipping through the papers.
She's ready.
Gilkison.
Who?
The
Who?
music?
What?
The
Who?
music man.
That poor man wrote all the music for this movie.
I think this is this the first meta poor unfortunate soul?
I love it.
I don't know what happened to him,
Right?
and it was unfortunate. What happened to him was unfortunate.
And
Does
he got
not
fi-
fit the profile?
he got fired, so I guess he's poor.
Oh my
He didn't
god.
make money from Disney.
Abigail, that's so great.
And he wrote such an amazing song.
But what if all his other ones weren't good?
I wonder who wrote Song of the Sea.
Okay, I
Anyway.
will say, just because I'm being difficult, to counteract, he did get nominated for an Oscar for that song. So he's not that poor unfortunate. But I agree. He did get fired after writing like 6 songs.
Yeah.
Who hasn't?
I feel bad, and like we've had so many instances so far of like people writing like 1,000 songs, and then Disney's like, nope.
No.
But you're
good.
really
I'm
you're
good.
really upset about this one.
That is so funny.
Because it's a really good song. Anyway, okay. So our thing of things, who was your favorite elephant?
Oh, Winifred.
Winifred.
Oh. Okay.
What did you think?
I was thinking the one that's like chewing curd.
No, he was nasty.
And he would, I thought he was funny.
He was funny, but he was nasty.
And then he would like step back.
Did you really think you were going to ask us who our favorite elephant was, and it wasn't going to be Verna Felton as an elephant talking to her
Sassy
husband?
woman fighting the patriarchy.
Oh. Well, she's kind of my favorite too.
She can be all of our favorites.
Do you want another thing of things?
No, that's the one I came up with.
Okay.
Another one.
Okay.
Oh man.
Well, I thought
There's
that's
some
a
great
one.
choices. There's
There
like
is,
the
the
buzz
elephants are
cut
good.
one.
That made me
There's
laugh.
Junior. There's the Colonel, and everybody loves a misogynistic man.
The family that is Colonel, Winifred, and Junior together, I love.
It's a great
Like,
dynamic.
their little dynamic.
The
of a
only thing
family.
better than having a man that's so like bossy is having a woman that can boss that bossy man around.
Behind every good elephant is a strong elephant woman.
All right. So, what was everybody's overall ranking and rating of this film?
I gave it a 3.5 out of 5.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I think it teeters between 3 and 3.5, especially after the hold up talk. But like I said, it's very middle of the road for me. But what bumps it up to the half a star is just analyzing it from an animator's point of view and the storytelling. It's just not my favorite. So out of 19, it is 9.
So for me, that's interesting that we have different star ratings because I put Jungle Book as 9 out of 19, but I gave it 3 stars without that half. Chris?
I gave it a 3.5, and it is number 6 out of 19.
If there was a quarter scale.
I also put it at 3.25.
Okay, so
our average is
3.25.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And where was it on yours?
6 out of 19.
That's high.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel like you liked it that much.
What is it above? Right above.
Right above?
Yeah.
Bambi.
You went above Bambi?
Am I rating them based on how well they hold up or how much I liked them?
I mean, mix, I guess.
We're rating
That's
them how
what
much
I
we
do.
liked them, right?
Yeah.
Then yes, it's above Bambi. I liked it more than Bambi.
Huh.
I think Bambi holds up more.
Yeah, I just like Bambi
It's
more.
right below.
Yeah, Bambi
I like
became...
the animation and the story of Bambi better.
I like Jungle Book better.
Well, that's why we all have our own little ranking scores.
That's why we do this.
Oh, gosh. All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. As always, this is our last film in the Silver Age. However, it is not our last episode of the Silver Age because next week we will be back with our probably extra special long episode of our mailbag. Yay. Please.
Can you read out all of the films that we cover in Silver Age to remind our
Of
listeners?
course. So for those of you that haven't written in yet, but still want to, there's still time. Go ahead and send those comments, questions, concerns, this or that's, whatever you want. And we're going to be discussing Cinderella, Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan, Lady and the Tramp, Sleeping Beauty, 101 Dalmatians, The Sword and the Stone, and The Jungle Book.
Oh my gosh.
I know. It's a lot.
Cinderella feels like 2 months ago.
I know. It was. But yeah, and you can reach out to us with any of those questions or comments via Instagram or Facebook if you just search for Idle Prattle Podcast, or you can email us at idleprattle.podcast@gmail.com.
And
As
always,
don't
underestimate
the
importance
of
Body language.
We tried.